All right, welcome back. Have you ever looked at something made of carbon fiber, like a part from a race car or an airplane, and wondered how we turn a simple liquid resin into that kind of incredibly strong, lightweight supermaterial? Well, it's a pretty amazing process of transformation, and today we're going to break it all down. So let's just dive right into the central mystery here. How in the world does a gooey liquid pull off such a radical change? It's definitely not as simple as just letting it dry. No, this is a carefully controlled chemical journey, one with really specific milestones and some pretty serious pitfalls. So how do engineers even begin to control this journey? Well, they're not just guessing and hoping for the best. They use a special kind of map to guide the whole process, making sure that resin gets to its destination in, well, perfect condition.
And this is that map. It's called a time-temperature transformation diagram, or TTT diagram for short. Basically, think of it as a cheat sheet that tells you exactly what state your resin is in at any given moment based on two things: how much time has gone by and what the temperature is. This thing is absolutely crucial for the entire process.
You know, this quote from our source just nails it. It perfectly captures the whole idea. This isn't just some boring graph. It's a navigation chart. It lets you actually pilot the curing process, helping you steer around all the hazards and head straight for that perfect final product. And speaking of the journey, our source material lays the whole thing out for us. It identifies 5 really distinct stages that every single thermosetting resin goes through as it transforms from a liquid to a solid. So let's walk through each one.
Okay, so here they are. First, initiation, then gelation, after that, vitrification, then shrinkage, and finally char. You can think of these as the key waypoints on our map, and believe me, understanding each one is absolutely critical to getting this whole transformation right.
All right, let's kick off this journey. We start with a simple liquid, right? But very quickly, it starts to approach a critical threshold, a true point of no return.
Everything kicks off with initiation. The second you mix the resin and the hardener, the clock starts ticking. A chemical reaction begins to fire up. It's exothermic, which just means it starts creating its own heat, and it begins to build these tiny molecular links. But right now, at this stage, it's all just potential. The mixture is still a workable liquid that you can pour and shape.
Then we hit gelation. This is our first huge transformation. Enough of those molecular crosslinks have formed that the material suddenly, and I mean suddenly, loses its ability to flow. Now, it's not a solid yet, not by a long shot, but it is definitely not a liquid anymore. It's a gel. And there's no going back.
Okay, now we're getting to what is, you could argue, the most important and trickiest part of the whole journey. This is the make or break moment where the material can get permanently locked in, for better or for worse. It's a stage I like to call the glassy trap. Officially, this stage is called vitrification, and it's the exact moment the material turns into a rigid, solid glass. This can happen in one of two ways. Either you physically cool it down, or the chemical reaction itself goes so far that the material basically hardens from the inside out, even if you keep the temperature the same. Either way, you end up with a rigid, solid glass.
So why is it a trap? Well, this quote right here explains it perfectly. If the material turns into a glass too early, the molecular network becomes so stiff, so rigid, that the leftover chemicals can't move around to find each other and finish reacting. It's kind of like trying to finish stirring the sugar into your cake batter after you've already baked the cake. It's just not going to happen. The reaction becomes diffusion limited. It grinds to a halt, and it traps the material in a weak, partially cured state forever.
Okay, let's make this super clear. Gelation, over on the left, that's all about flow, or, well, the lack of flow. The material can't flow anymore, but it's still very much chemically reactive. Now, vitrification on the right, that's about becoming a rigid solid, and that's where the reactions get slowed way down or even stopped completely. So gelation separates liquid from gel, but vitrification, that marks the true boundary of a solid state.
You'd think once it's solid, we're done, right? Well, not quite. There are these hidden forces building up inside the material, internal stresses that can warp, crack, or just totally weaken the final part if you don't manage them properly.
And that brings us to stage 4, shrinkage. You see, as this whole cure is happening, the material is actually shrinking, and for two main reasons. First, you've got chemical shrinkage. As all those new molecular links form, they're literally pulling the molecules tighter together. And second, you've got thermal shrinkage. That's just the simple contraction that happens as the hot, finished part cools down to room temperature.
Both of these create these powerful internal stresses that get locked into the part, which can lead to warping or cracking way down the line.
And that leads us to the final stage, which you really want to avoid, and that's char. If you push the temperature way too high or you hold it there for far too long, you basically navigate right off the edge of the map. That carefully built molecular network, it doesn't just get trapped, it starts to break down, to burn, to decompose. And that is an irreversible failure you have to avoid at all costs.
So, when you look back at everything we just covered, the point of no return, that glassy trap, all those hidden stresses, it becomes crystal clear why having that map, that TTT diagram, isn't just a nice to have. It's absolutely essential. And really, this is the whole point. The entire purpose of this TTD diagram is to show you the perfect path for the cure. It lets engineers design a specific recipe of time and temperature, a cure cycle, that lets them thread the needle, right? It helps them steer right past gelation, but carefully dodge that vitrification trap until the reaction is totally complete. And that is how you get a fully cured, incredibly strong, and internally stress-free final part. So, the map is right there. It shows you the path to a perfect material. It guides this incredible transformation from a simple liquid all the way to a complex, high-performance solid, which really just leaves us with one last big question. What on earth happens when you decide to ignore it?